Okay, well, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for our SIMAP and Second Nature webinar on reporting. We're really excited to be joined by our partner Second Nature, represented by Andy DeMeo. And in this webinar, we're going to start with some SIMAP background, a quick intro to SIMAP and an overview of the steps that you take to calculate your carbon footprint in SIMAP. Then Andy will tell us more about Second Nature, about the programs they do with the focus on the climate leadership commitment. Then we'll take a look at the specific steps that you take to transfer your data from SIMAP over to the Second Nature reporting platform. And we know that many of you are working towards finalizing your inventories for reporting to Second Nature this year. So we hope that this will be useful going through these steps, and we'll be able to answer any questions you've got at the end. And just a couple of quick housekeeping items. As questions occur to you, please post them in the chat. We'll be keeping an eye on those, and we'll come back to them when we get to the Q&A session at the end. And we will be posting a recording of this webinar afterwards, and also the slide set. So some SIMAP background. This is the SIMAP team. I'm Allie Leach. I'm a researcher with the UNH Sustainability Institute, where I work on SIMAP user support and research and development. And our team is made up of several individuals with the UNH Sustainability Institute. So Jen Andrews, who's a project director, Ben Robinson, who's a technical program assistant, works on calculating the emission factors. Cassidy Yates, who's a graduate student and SIMAP intern, and she leads the data reviews now. And Bailey Jones, who's an undergraduate intern who joined our team a few months ago and is working on data reviews and a research project on electric vehicles.
And I'm Andy on the right there. My boss, Steve, is the one who usually does these webinars, but we finally felt like I was ready to give it a go this year. So it's a pleasure to be here. We're a staff of 10 or 11 at Second Nature, but just the folks who you'd be interacting, when it comes to reporting at SIMAP, that's going to be either myself or my boss, Steve Muzzy. So when you get in touch with reporting at secondnature.org, it's just Steve and I, and glad to be here today.
Great, thanks, Andy. Okay, so some quick SIMAP background. What is SIMAP? SIMAP stands for Sustainability Indicator Management and Analysis Platform. And SIMAP is a web-based tool. It's a carbon and nitrogen footprint accounting platform, and it helps you track, analyze, and improve your campus-wide sustainability. We launched SIMAP in November 2017, so a few years ago now. And when we launched, we were bringing together two tools that were Excel-based tools. One of those you all were probably very familiar with. That was the carbon footprint tool, originally developed right at UNH in 2001. And it was Excel-based, and there was also a web version called Carbon Map. And this tool went by a number of names over the years. It was the Clean Air, Cool Planet tool, the Campus Carbon Calculator, and more. And this was widely used for carbon footprints. On the nitrogen footprint side, I worked with a team at the University of Virginia developing the first campus nitrogen footprint model. And it was Excel-based as well. And we just finished pilot testing when we worked on integrating it with SIMAP. So at a very basic level, how does SIMAP work? So you enter your activity data into the web-based platform. And so that activity data spans 3 different scopes. In scope 1, you've got your direct emissions like on-campus stationary, direct transportation, refrigerants, agriculture sources. Then in scope 2, like purchased electricity, steam, and chilled water, also where you enter any market transactions like renewable energy credits. And scope 3, which is where you can enter your data on indirect emission sources like commuting and business travel, food, paper, and more. And scope 3 is a category that we're working on expanding out. So in the coming months and years, we'll be adding additional categories to scope 3 to represent the full spectrum of activities on campus. So once you enter your activity data set, SIMAP uses the most up-to-date emission factors and recommended methodologies to calculate both your carbon and nitrogen footprint. So a single data set gives you both of these footprints. And when we made the plan to integrate carbon and nitrogen, one of those reasons was streamlining. Rather than having 2 different tools, it's now one tool to calculate both footprints. And it also gives us a broader picture of environmental impact. So carbon, of course, looks at a campus's contribution to greenhouse gas emissions. But the nitrogen footprint looks at a broad range of impacts. The major sources of nitrogen pollution are fossil fuel combustion and food production. Food production usually makes up more than half of a campus nitrogen footprint. And once nitrogen gets into the environment, it contributes to a cascade of negative impacts to human and environmental health, including some local impacts like air quality and water quality and biodiversity loss, as well as global impacts. So looking at these two together really gives you a broader picture of your campus sustainability. We did also want to mention that there's a number of things that you can calculate in SIMAP that you can then enter into your STARS report. So the greenhouse gas inventory, of course, is one. The nitrogen footprint is an exemplary practice credit. The nitrogen oxide emissions or NOx emissions calculated in SIMAP for the nitrogen footprint can be used for your air quality report. And if you do a data review with our team, that counts as a third-party data review. So once you're ready to calculate your carbon footprint, how do you do that? So we know that collecting your data is often the most challenging part of an inventory because it requires collecting data across your entire campus, usually talking to folks in multiple institutions, organizations, and then processing that data set. And once you've got that data set, you can enter it into your SIMAP account. And this is an overview of the steps here. First is on the account tab, you enter your basic institution information. Then you actually enter that activity data set either on the data entry tab, or you can import bulk data. And I'll go through each of these in a little more detail here. On the data management tab, you can select your methods, and then you can view your results on the results tab and the reports tab. So once you log into a SIMAP account, these are the different tabs that you see across the top here. But when you're not logged in, you can still see this homepage as well as the resources tab. So even when not logged in, you can see all of the background information and documentation that we've got on the resources tab. On the homepage here, I did just want to draw your attention to the news feed where we post updates. So for example, at the top here, we've got this webinar that you are all logged onto today. And we post slide sets and recordings from previous webinars, links to our newsletters, and other methodology updates. So the first step, once you're setting up your account, is going to the account tab and entering your basic institution information on the institution tab. So this is your basic demographic information, your what institution type you are, whether this is the official account for your institution in SIMAP, university name. So this is information you just fill out once when you're setting up your account. The account tab is also where you enter your normalization data like budgets and physical spaces and population. So if you want to run normalizations on the results tab, you would need to come here to enter this normalization data and update it each year as you get new data. Then once you've got your data set ready for entry, there's two ways to enter it. The first is on the data entry tab, and this is where you enter individual data points within the web interface. Along the left panel, there's the different categories organized by scope with syncs at the end here. And so you can click on an individual one. Here we're looking at the stationary fuels page. Each page will show a summary of the data you've already entered, listing each data point. And then you can click the enter data button to actually enter data. So this is the probably the most common way for entering data and works well for when you're entering 1 year of data. So when you're working on a particular inventory. The other option for entering your data is importing a spreadsheet. So that spreadsheet, the data collection template, you can get from the resources tab and then enter it on the data management tab through import data. And that works well for bulk data import. So if you're looking, this is the first time you're setting up your account, you've got historic data to import that we found works really well. And the data collection template is actually a scaled down version of the Excel-based campus carbon calculator. You can also import that full campus carbon calculator as well. Then once if you got your activity data in there, you can also customize your emission factors. So at the bottom of this data entry tab, there's this section for calculation factors. This is where you can view emission factors. Here we've got the emission factors page that has most of the emission factors. There's a few specific categories over here as well, but you can navigate to a scope, a source, an emission type, and then view all of those emission factors over time. And this is also where you can customize them. So you can enter text into this field here for your custom emission factor, page to the bottom and click the Save button. On this page, you can also go to specific reference pages for each source that lay out exactly what our data sources are and our calculations for developing these emission factors. The other emission factor pages are the utility emission factor page, the food conversion factors page, and this is also where you can view the global warming potential factors that we use and the unit conversion factors. Then once you've got your data entered, your emission factors entered, you can go to the data management tab and select your methods on the calculation sources and methods page. And there's a number of method selections available. The emission factor version, we release a new one of these each year. The global warming potential version, there's a few different options here based on different versions of IPCC assessment reports, and we offer both 100-year and 20-year GWPs. You can see the recommendation is still to use these 100-year GWPs for your reporting. The 20-year provide a separate way of looking at your emissions on a shorter time scale. We have a couple of methods related to air travel and your scope 2 method selection. For each of these methods, there are pages below with more information describing the different method options, what goes into them, and what's recommended. And then we also list what the recommended method is in the actual text here. And then this page is also where you can select your eGrid region for your scope 2 electricity emissions factor. Then you can view your results. So this is the results tab. It shows what the selections are available. You can view just your carbon footprint or nitrogen footprint or both side by side. You can view lots of different view options here. So the gross footprint and net footprint are two new options that I'll show you in just a moment. We split out the total footprint graph into the gross footprint and net footprint graph. Then there's a scopes view, categories. Sources generates a big table with every single specific category in your inventory. So if you want to get into the details, this is a good place to go. Then the gas pollutant view. Tier 2 accounts can select their campus and can filter by tags. You can also select your scope 2 method here. You can select whether or not to show biogenic on those total footprint views and select a year range and any normalizations you want to run. So I'll just show you a couple of the graph views here. So this is the new gross footprint graph. And now when you view a graph, a sentence like this will appear that defines what's included in that graph. So this gross footprint graph shows the gross emissions, your total emissions before applying any offsets. And it also shows any sinks you've got, so any offsets or compost. And so you can see this particular account has no offsets entered, but does have some non-additional sequestration and a little bit of compost. And those appear as negative because those are negative for the footprint, so sequestration. Then you can also view your biogenic footprint here as well. The net footprint graph then only shows your net footprint, which is the gross emissions minus sink. So this is the net footprint is your final number that you're reporting. And on top of that, you can view your biogenic emissions. Biogenic emissions are considered carbon neutral, but the recommendation is to also report them when you're reporting your greenhouse gas inventory. Then the categories view is one that we've had since we launched SIMAP. It's a way of looking at your footprint across all of the more specific categories. So it includes all of your scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions. It does not include sinks and non-additional sequestration here. So it just focuses in on the categories. And here I did just want to point out what I mentioned earlier about the nitrogen footprint, that it is really driven by food. So if you're interested in assessing the sustainability of your campus's food, calculating the nitrogen footprint is a good way to do that. Then the reports tab really packages your results by a specific topic. So this here is showing the annual report, which is really a snapshot of an individual year. There's also a food report that looks at the food footprint by specific categories, a commuting report that shows all of your commuting information in one place, including your data entry and your results. the Second Nature report. So we'll be highlighting that later on as a way to view all of the data that gets transferred with the API, and several more. And we're working on adding to these. And then I did want to draw your attention to the resources tab. We recently redesigned this. Graduate intern Cassidy Yates did a redesign of this page with this new layout. And it has these icons and little information about what you can find on each of these pages. The tools is where you can download that campus data collection template. We've got the user's guide, and then the training page is where we post recordings of webinars and slide sets and any short training videos we do. And we also offer data reviews, which are a structured way of us looking at your full inventory and results. What we do is we take a look at your account and identify any outliers or gaps or inconsistencies, and take a look at the methods and approaches that you're using in your calculations. We then come up with a list of recommendations and go over those in an hour-long video call with you all. And you can earn ASU STARS points for this as an independent validation of your data set. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Andy, who's going to tell us more about Second Nature.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allie. Let me just request control here. I saw that somebody gave what looked like a thumbs up. I think that's in the limited ways that you can express feedback through emoji. That's one of the options. I just wanted to say I did see that, and we appreciate that thumbs up very much. I'm not really sure what the function is, but anyway, just wanted you to be seen and heard. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about Second Nature, kind of, a bit of our history and some of the things that we do, and then we're going to, walk you through how to do the data transfer. So in a nutshell, the mission of Second Nature is to accelerate climate action in and through higher education. And Second Nature as an organization has been around since, I think, the mid-1990s. It's kind of the brainchild of John Kerry and Tony Cortese. It was started with seed money from the Heinz Ketchup Foundation, I believe. But we have close ties to, all the other, organizations and folks in this space, like ASHE and the Intentional Endowments Network. But today, our chief program is the President's Climate Commitments. And for a little history on those, originally in 2006, this is when the commitment was first launched. It had 12 founding signatories. At that time, it was called the American College and University President's Climate Commitment. And it grew pretty rapidly until, a couple of years later, we became the main managing organization. We used to co-manage it with ASHE. And, I think around 2015, that's when we did the rebrand, because, we would say ACU PCC and people would say, what does it stand for? And it's just, who needs more alphabet soup in any space, but specifically the, sustainability in higher ed space. It's everywhere. So the less mouthfuls, the better. We changed the name, made it simpler. But more importantly, we added two other commitments, or kind of one. I'll explain. But we added the ability for folks to not just commit to achieving carbon neutrality by a date of their choice, but also to commit to achieving some measure of climate resilience. So you can commit to carbon neutrality, just resilience, or you can commit to both, and that's the carbon resilience and climate commitments. So as kind of a grand summary, more than 800 institutions of higher education have signed one of the three commitments since their inception. Today, there's about 450 signatories who we would describe as actively participating. Most of those are carbon and climate signatories. And since 2010, I did this analysis the other day, signatories have saved a cumulative, it's anywhere between $240 million and $700 million from implementing their climate action plans, which they were required to do as being signatories to the commitment. So we're pretty proud of that progress, and we're still going strong. And this is our flagship program that we love to show off to everybody. But there's a little more that we do. So every year, in a normal year, that is, it all comes together at this one event called the Higher Education Climate Leadership Summit. In most recent years, we've had this in Tempe, Arizona, and Atlanta, Georgia. And in a nutshell, this is the best way for folks to come together and understand what the network is all about. It's a great way to get senior leadership to kind of understand what the network is all about. Given that presidents and chancellors are the ones who make this commitment on behalf of their institutions. The summit has just been one of those flagship things that it's always been a really good time and a great success. We get people from across the political spectrum. Bill Clinton has come to one of our summits. Marco Rubio gave a kind of a virtual video intro at one a couple of years ago. And the other thing to know is that since 2017, we co-produce our annual summit with our sister organization, the Intentional Endowments Network. But I mean, they're just great. You get everyone together. We have receptions and workshops, and there's a whole bunch of networking, and we give out awards, and it's the best time of the year because we talk about the progress and kind of gets everybody jazzed up for the year to come. But given that this is not a year where we can all meet in person, we are, in lieu of a summit, doing a program we call the Climate Action Pursuit. So instead of one big event in person once a year, we're kind of doing 4 smaller, more mini virtual events, 4 times throughout 2021. The first one was in February. It was a blast, went off pretty well. We have another one coming up in June, and then October and December. And, there's a bunch more information about that on our website. You can reach out to me, but, would totally love to see all you folks there. And if you're interested in, trying to get your president to attend, just let me know, because, there's often situations where we can initiate, those peer-to-peer conversations between presidents. So this is a really great opportunity. I mean, we had, I think, 60 or 70 presidents come to the pursuit in February, which was just, for us, that's an unprecedented level of senior leadership engagement. So it was a really great program. The presidents and chancellors got a lot out of it. If that's something that interests you, just let me know. But now I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the other programs and things that we do. So we've got the Solution Center. Basically, this is it's a collaboration with some corporate partners of ours where we, help folks identify, carbon or energy reducing activities that are just all about supporting campus climate action goals. And in a nutshell, the goal is to help campuses more quickly review the solutions available to them, and basically to help you build an easy to understand presentation for decision makers so that they can help assess and prioritize those decisions in the context of climate action. For every solution that we offer in the center, you'll see that we have kind of a general overview, some of the benefits and challenges, resources you can check out for the implementation of that solution, and then some experts that you can contact. And kind of the other fun thing about the Solution Center, this is what was so great about our partners helping us do it. So campuses can apply for some pro bono consulting. And it's basically for campuses who, if they want some help, doing climate action planning, or they're trying to shift to renewable power, this is basically who that's for. And, winners or award recipients will receive, several $1,000s worth of services from Brailsford and Dunleavy or Customer First Renewables. And for some context, we judge these submissions based on things like, how much does your proposal involve key stakeholders? How meaningful is the impact on your greenhouse gas emissions? What's the potential for scaling the impact? Does this help develop long-term campus relationships? So we're really, really looking for those proposals that are rooted in, kind of the long-term view of what's going to be the best path for climate action for us and our institutional stakeholders. Similarly, we have a program called the Climate Solutions Acceleration Fund. for which campuses are just awarded cash to pursue climate action. And, similar vein, priority is given to schools who they foster long-term campus community partnerships and have the potential to scale their work beyond the term of the grant, which for the first round is through June 2021. So yeah, these signatories or members of UC3, you're all eligible to apply for these programs. And here are some of the award recipients for the past year. And they've all done great. I mean, I get the progress reports for them, and it's amazing to see what folks have been doing with the awards. So that's a really fun program. Next, we have the reporting platform. This is really the place where it all comes together. The network, in a way, is a big part of it is about the reporting of the data. This is how it's done. We use it to track and kind of assess and communicate progress. And what I think is greatest about the reporting platform is, the whole thing is open to the public. So it makes it real easy to demonstrate to foundations or private sector partners or even prospective students that your institution is serious and transparent about its commitment to doing something about climate change. I mean, we get research inquiries all the time, from different academics or students or folks who want to use the data in the platform to study something. And it is an actively used tool, and the submissions from each individual signatory are what make the reporting platform great. So this is, of all the things that we do, I am perhaps proudest of what the reporting platform is and kind of the progress that it shows in the network. Couple other things, all the webinars that we've ever done, you can find them all online. We send out a monthly newsletter that kind of tracks everything that we do, what's going on in the network. We have some tools to help you price carbon internally at your institution if that's something you're interested in. Our C2P2 program helps institutions basically bundle together, if they have offsets that they're able or interested in selling, they bundle them together with other institutions. Then they kind of use us as an intermediary by virtue of being the network, and then we work with a marketer to help market those credits. And it's great. They're able to get a whole bunch of revenue flowing back through their campuses. I think UIUC is the 800-pound gorilla of carbon offsets. I mean, they pulled in hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in the last couple of years. So it's a really, really wonderful program that I actually now facilitate now that Ruby Woodside has moved on. So if you're interested in that, happy to talk more about it. Then we got UC3. It's similar to the Climate Leadership Network. It's a fair bit smaller, but basically a whole bunch of research universities from the USA, Canada, and Mexico that are all committed to mobilizing their resources and expertise, really to not just accelerate climate action on their campuses, but UC3 puts a heavy emphasis on partnerships with businesses and cities and states and foundations. These are the 19 or 20 current members. Drexel University actually just joined UC3 a couple days ago, so they are not on here, but they should be included. Next, we've got the Offset Network, which is a fantastic group that's pretty much facilitated by us and Duke University. They help develop criteria for reviewing peer-reviewed offset projects in higher ed. And if you've got an offset project and you're not super sure what to do with it, how to proceed, what it could mean for your campus, or where to go with it, this is a really, really great resource. They've helped folks at every step of this process, get their projects off the ground and up and running. And they're a fantastic group of people. And yeah, I also kind of co-facilitate the Offset Network now that Ruby has moved on, and it's been a really, really wonderful experience and getting to know all them. And you have any questions, I'm the person you'll be talking to about that as well. We also have a couple nonprofit partnerships. with these organizations. Of course, you know about SIMAP. You know, there's our sister organization, IEN, and then we have GRITS and series as well. But basically, by virtue of being a signatory, you get discounted rates or some level of exclusive access to the services that any of these organizations offer. Yeah, so that's a bit about Second Nature, and now we can talk about the great thing about our partnership with SIMAP and how to transfer your SIMAP data over to the reporting platform. You ready, Allie?
Yes, thanks, Andy, for that great overview of all of those programs that Second Nature is leading. Great to hear more about all of those. So as Andy said, now we're going to be taking a look at the steps that you take to transfer your data, your greenhouse gas inventory results from SIMAP over to the Second Nature reporting platform. So I'm going to start this off on everything that needs to be done on the SIMAP end to get your data set ready, all the methods and that you need to select, and then Andy will tell us what to do on the reporting platform side. So this is an overview of the key steps for getting your data set ready on the SIMAP side. And we'll go through each of these in a little more detail, but a quick overview is that first you just need to enter your API key on the account tab. Then you select some required methods on the data management tab. You view your results on the reports tab to see what exactly will be transferred. Then you mark that year that you're trying to transfer as complete so that the reporting platform knows it's ready to go. So we'll take a closer look at each of these steps. So that first step is entering your API key. So you can go to the account tab and the institution page, scroll to the bottom of that institution page, and there's a field where you can enter your Second Nature API key. Andy will show us where in the reporting platform you can find that API key. Basically, what it does is it tells Second Nature which account to pull data from. Then that's a thing you only enter once, so it's not something that changes. It's once you've got it in there and got it saved, it'll be there saved in your SIMAP account going forward. Then there are a couple of method selections to make. These are all on the data management tab on the calculation sources and methods page. And I've got the required methods for the Second Nature API boxed here. First is one on emission factors. And the API requires that you use the most current recommended version of emission factors. And in this case, that's the 2020 version. And also asks that you use the recommended Scope 2 method, the market-based method. And the reason that these two methods are selected here and that there are these requirements is that the goal is to ensure that all of the inventories being reported are using the most up-to-date emission factors and the recommended method so that we can more easily compare and know what we're looking at for the campus results. So really consistency across inventories here and using the best available data sets and methods. One other thing on the data management tab for tier 2 accounts, when you've got multiple campuses, they'll show up down here. This here is showing the main campus. If you have additional ones and scroll down here, you would see those other campuses here. And there's a checkbox here that says include in Second Nature API. And so if you have that checked, when you pull the data over, it'll pull over data with that campus. And if you've got a multi-campus account and you want to pull over one account at a time or just maybe one account, then you might check or uncheck some of those boxes. Then the next step is to see if your results look like they make sense to you. So if you go to the reports tab here and specifically select the Second Nature report, it'll display a table showing all of the data points that'll be pulled over as part of the API. And so this is a way just to confirm that it makes sense, that everything you expected to find here is indeed here. And it's also a place you can check once you've done the transfer to see, okay, is this matching up? And it, this is something that we've tested extensively, but a way for you to refer back to what exactly will be transferred. Then we have this link here below the reports dropdown, more information on the Second Nature report. If you click that, that'll pull up this page here. That lays out the Second Nature report in more detail, and I've got the link up here as well. It lists what is included as part of the API, and I wanted to bring your attention to a few items that are not yet part of this API transfer, and these are in this box down here. So these are items that are calculated in SIMAP, are also possible to enter in the Second Nature reporting platform, but we do not have them set up in the API right now. These are areas that we plan to expand to in the future. If these are aspects of your footprint that you are reporting to Second Nature, then you'll just want to go into the reporting platform and copy these over into the relevant fields. Then once you've checked over your data, selected your methods, the next step is to mark those years as complete. So you can do that on the Data Management tab on the Status page and check the box to indicate a year is complete. And what that does is it then tells the Second Nature reporting platform that this particular year is available for transfer. If you don't mark it as complete, then it will not show up as an option for the transfer. And as a side note, this is also where once you've completed a data review, the box will be checked here to indicate a data review is complete for a given year. So those are all the steps on the SIMAP end. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Andy so he can tell us what to do on the Second Nature reporting end.
Yeah, thanks, Sally. Gonna be honest, most of the work is on the SIMAP end, but it can still be helpful for folks to be shown, kind of where everything is. So if you log in to the Second Nature reporting platform, this is what you're going to see. This will be the basic kind of outlook of your dashboard. And if you scroll down a little bit, you will see this section, with the annual progress evaluations. I've got it circled here in red. That is the report that folks are expected to submit every year, and it should be in draft form if you're going to import your results. So you click into any one of your drafts, say the 2021 is the one we're going to use. You click right into it. This is the first tab, and your API key should just pop up there, and so you can take that, you copy it, you put that into SIMAP in the specified place that Ali just shared. And as long as all those criteria are true and you click save over at SIMAP, when you refresh this page, it should just pop right up. This should change to a load data from SIMAP prompt instead of this is your API key. And then when you click that button, it'll load, all the data into, your emissions, your mitigation, and, your normalization and contextualization data tabs. And that's pretty much how that goes on our end. If you'd like, we do have a quick little video tutorial on how to do this. That's just on YouTube at any time. If you're the kind of person that prefers just to be shown a video, that's totally cool. Here's the link for it. We can share that with you all. But of course, reach out to me or Steve or the reporting email, and we're always happy to walk folks through step by step, because sometimes a lot of little things can go wrong, and it can be kind of confusing to remember all the steps if you're only reporting once a year. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the working groups that we in SIMAP co-facilitate. I facilitate the commuting working group, and basically the overarching goal of the commuting working group is to standardize and improve commuting data collection and entry in higher education. And more specifically, the goals of that group are, we want to develop a data collection template that kind of standardizes, data collection for commuting, for folks in higher education. We want to, make that easy for them. We want to develop kind of a standard survey which aligns with the collection template and is easily adaptable for different campuses. And we want to answer those thornier questions about how do we calculate the footprint of some of these newer commuting sources like electric vehicles or telecommuting. So we in SIMAP are working hard with folks at 10 or so other institutions, trying to answer these questions and get some guidance out to people. If you're interested in any of that, let me know. But when it's all finished, you'll see it in our newsletter or posted on our websites. Yeah, that's a bit about commuting. Ali, did you want to talk about biogenic and nitrogen?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. So the Biogenic Working Group is also co-facilitated with Second Nature. The two leads for it are Steve Muzzy from Second Nature and Jen Andrews from UNH. And the Biogenic Working Group is really focusing on two overarching questions. First, how higher ed can contribute to discussions on biogenic emissions. So there's a parallel working group being facilitated by the Greenhouse Gas Protocol and World Resources Institute that is trying to answer some questions about how biogenic emissions should be treated in carbon footprints. Right now, they're considered carbon neutral, but they're exploring whether that should continue to be the case. And then this technical working group facilitated by the Greenhouse Gas Protocol is also looking at land sequestration, so this non-additional sequestration category, and how that should be accounted for in the future. So members of our working group are also participating in that working group, and we've been discussing what is higher ed's role in this discussion. Then the second goal of this working group is to bring transparency to the biogenic footprint. The first way that we've done that is developing the biogenic emissions report. So you can see a screenshot from that right here. It's available on the reports tab. And what it does is it shows you your biogenic emissions by category and also shows how those biogenic emissions relate to your net footprint. Next, we'll be working on a campus lands report that brings forward more about that non-additional sequestration category. And we'll then be releasing a report on carbon neutrality that tries to bring everything together, your net footprint, your biogenic footprint, and your campus lands management all into a single report on carbon neutrality. So more to come from that working group. Then a third working group that we just launched earlier this year is the nitrogen working group. This is co-facilitated by myself with two nitrogen experts from the University of Virginia, Jim Galloway and Libby Dukes. And the nitrogen working group is focusing on two goals. Since food is so central to the nitrogen footprint, that group has been working on improving and streamlining the collection and processing of food data. We know those data sets can be very large and difficult to process. So we're trying to find ways to automate that process and make it a little bit easier. We've actually got a new tool now in beta mode that was developed by a grad student from Stanford who put together a script that will actually take your food purchase data set and automatically categorize the food products based on some keywords. So that's one of the important steps in processing a food data set that this beta tool makes a little bit easier. So if you're interested in that, please get in touch and we can share that tool. Nitrogen Working Group is also working on communication and outreach around the nitrogen footprint. So trying to communicate its importance and why and how campuses should calculate their nitrogen footprint. So I think that is everything that we have today. This is just a quick overview here of what we shared, an overview on SIMAP, the steps for calculating your footprint, an overview of Second Nature and the great programs that they lead, and the steps for calculating or transferring your data from SIMAP over to the Second Nature reporting platform. So at this point, we'd like to open it up for questions. So please submit any questions that you've got in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to ask a question directly. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat right now. Andy, have you got any? Okay, great. So it looks like this is a question for you, Andy, about Second Nature, or I guess this could be a question for either one, either Second Nature or SIMAP. But once you've submitted your data to the Second Nature reporting platform, Andy, could you answer whether that can be corrected?
Yeah, absolutely. Just because a report is not in draft form anymore, you can still edit it. You can change it anytime. This is actually something that is quite common. Signatories they'll go back and they'll make retroactive changes because there's been they've realized a change in methodology, or they've realized that the person before them maybe didn't know what they were doing. It's very common to go back and revise previous years, just to make them more in line of either being more accurate or just a better picture of what your campus is doing. So yes, and it is not unusual.
and actually recommended in cases where you add a category to your footprint or you change the methodology for the calculations, because you want to make sure that when you're tracking over time, that your comparison across years is showing a real change in emissions and not just a change in your methodology or your system bounds. So we actually encourage folks to go back and update previous inventories whenever they add a new category or whenever they change the underlying assumptions or methods for their calculations. And I see there we've got another question about biogenic emissions and the Second Nature reporting platform.
Yes, there is a section for biogenic emissions and on the second tab of the annual progress evaluation. There are actually two. There's one for emissions from stationary combustion and another from mobile combustion. But yes, you can do that.
And it's not currently part of the API, so it won't automatically transfer. That's something we're going to work on expanding in the future. But you can calculate that data in SIMAP, and then you can enter it into your report on the Second Nature reporting platform. And related to the first question about whether you can change your data, answering that from the SIMAP end, once you mark a year as complete on the status page, it doesn't lock your results. You can still go back and change them. It's really more, it has two purposes. One is for your team, marking that as complete, so you know for your own tracking purposes that a particular year is complete. Sometimes when a campus has done some historic calculations and maybe there's a year that they're not very confident in the data, they won't mark that as complete so that they know that it's not a year that they're confident in. So that's the first reason for that checkbox. And the second is that it lets the Second Nature reporting platform know that a year is ready for transfer. So it doesn't lock anything in your account. It just is an indication that you think it's complete. Okay, well, any other questions today about the API or anything about your inventory calculations in general? Okay, well, I think we can go ahead and wrap up then. We'll be posting this webinar, the recording and the slide set to the SIMAP training page. And Andy and I are also always available to answer any questions that you've got as you're working on your inventory and working on the transfer. You can see the URLs for the two sites here and also our contact emails right here for Second Nature. It's reporting@secondnature.org. I think that's usually going to be Andy that answers emails at that email address. Is that right, Andy?
That is correct.
Great. And then we've got our email here for SIMAP, simap@unh.edu. If you submit a question there or to the Google form that we have, that'll be me answering those questions. So we look forward to hearing from you all, any questions that you've got as you're finalizing your inventories. And thank you so much for joining us today. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for joining all. Bye-bye.